side of the country, Ukraine. To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, with that, moving to a roll call. I see who's here. So, and you're here. Senator Brewster is on the screen. Representative Davis is on the screen. Gary, are you here? Gary's along? Yes. Okay.
Jeff, I'm here. I can't hear you very well. I don't know if your microphone's picking up.
I don't know. It says microphone live. For the rest of you having trouble hearing me?
Yes, you are faint.
Jeff, this is Jim. I'm having the same problem.
The actual voice, my own actor.
Yes.
John Bain is here. We just heard from Representative Zborski. Carmen is here. And Michelle Manic is here. So thank you all.
Austin Davis is here.
It said that. Okay.
Oh.
Representative Austin Davis.
So the
Okay, next we'll go on to the approval of the minutes of the March 25th, 2022 regular meeting. I have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Oh, Jeffrey.
Second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Okay,
Jeff, I'm
opposed?
still struggling to hear you. Just sorry to interrupt.
Hey, Jack,
Okay.
can I do a restart?
Any better?
No, hey, excuse me, Board Chair, can we
Okay,
do,
well, it's not me, it's the system.
yeah, can we do a 2-minute restart? It's us. So, just give us 2 minutes, please.
It's not you. Good. Okay, we lost our screens here though.
The back screen's on.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
That's much
Yes.
better.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, well, the minutes are approved, and with that, we'll move into the report of the Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Kellerman.
I just watched the Zoom in and that was kind of scary, to be honest. Okay, good morning. Good morning to the members of the board, members of the public who are joining us. May I please have a moment of silence for the following retired employees who have passed away in March. Operators James Ramsey, Clifford Smith, Richard Lucas, and Martin Cava. Off-board fare collector Judy Stevenson, and dispatcher Kenneth Dugan. Thank you. I'd like to clarify on some changes to Port Authority's mask policy since the last time we met. As many of us are aware, Port Authority was under a TSA directive to require masks on all of our transit vehicles and all of our transit hubs. Practically what this meant for us was everybody in a garage or any facility where transit could be maintained had to wear a mask. This also meant that we kept those rules here at our executive building because if it was at every other location, it was fair to keep it at this building as well. With recent court rulings, the TSA required mandate for masks coming under CDC's authority has been thrown out. And that mandate was going to expire on the 3rd of May, a Tuesday at any rate. So you have seen us move away from masks required and signage will be upgraded to masking recommended. We will no longer be in the position where any of our operators have to police their vehicle for people wearing masks in addition to everything else that we ask them to do. We understand the feelings from some of our passengers who have, family members at home who are immunocompromised or maybe immunocompromised themselves. We will continue to strongly recommend the use of masks on all of our vehicles. And our operators over at Access right now are wearing masks until further notice. in recognition of the population they serve who is more vulnerable. So things continue to change quickly 2 years into a pandemic, and just wanted to do a quick update on the masks. I also want to talk about service on the street. And let me start off with, if you are a Port Authority passenger and you've been affected by this, you deserve better. If you're a Port Authority employee and you have been yelled at by a passenger or a stakeholder or anyone else, you deserve better as well. And if you're here in Port Authority and you're developing these schedules or you're getting them out with customer service, you deserve better. I want to start off acknowledging that, because everything I say, which is sort of our inside baseball, is irrelevant to you when you're on that street corner and your bus or your train is not showing up. We've been exacerbated on our manpower throughout the pandemic. In November 2020, we trued up schedules based on the manpower we had at the time. In November, December, January, and February of this last cycle through the fiscal year, we were out of service anywhere from 2 to 3% a day. This situation is not unique to us. We see it around the country. During the Great Resignation, where everyone is struggling to hire, transit has been hit especially hard, and we know this is a tough job. We see our friends in other cities doing big schedule changes to reduce service simply because they cannot hire enough. And we have been very fortunate that we have not been in the situations of having 10, 12% out of service. We had an issue that we had to address. It certainly has been exacerbated by our vaccine mandate, where we pulled so many people out of service to go through the hearing process to show that they had their shots, or to give them the opportunity to go through another process. Do they decide to retire? Do they decide to leave the agency? We've stabilized with less service out than we had expected. We're still about 4 to 5% out of service on a given basis right now. Again, you deserve better than that. You don't care if another city's doing worse. Our schedule to you is a promise, and every trip on that schedule should be filled. So what is Port Authority doing about this? We do 4 schedule changes in a year. It takes us anywhere from 2 to 3 months to get a schedule change out the door once the schedules are done. So based on the manpower levels we've had and seeing ridership, you will see revised schedules in June that do take out trips that we have not been able to run. Again, we did this in November 2020. If we know we can't run a trip, we need to make sure that we can move that service around so every trip can be filled. The budget that will be presented next month includes the exact same number of operators, includes the same hours of service, includes more maintenance jobs, because our intent is to hire in as many folks as we can, fill the schedules we have, and continue the growth that Allegheny County deserves. Again, it's not acceptable for anybody to have to miss their bus trip. We can talk all day about, we have an operator class graduating next Friday. We have another class coming through. We're changing schedules. We know it's been hard on you. We are very sorry for this. We look forward to the opportunity to do better for you. I mean, the bottom line is the pandemic has been everyone's least favorite 2 years. It's been tough on everybody, from our folks who are frontline, have been out there driving for 2 years, to our customer service folks who have to get people through all these other services facing them, to our friends on access who are deeply concerned about their health, to the folks in this building who are making sure that we can pay our bills, that are making sure information is conveyed to customers. For everybody, the pandemic has been really rough. We appreciate the grace we've had from our staff and from our passengers. And we look forward to doing better for you. Clearly, everyone who's at Port Authority wants to deliver the best service that they can. Nobody here comes into work saying, I'll do a bad job. Everyone wants to do the best they can. And I want to stress that these schedule issues are not the fault of the people you see driving your buses and trains. We'll happily accept the complaints that come toward us, but the folks who are out there providing this service are not the ones who've made these schedules hard to meet. Like our transit partners across the country and many other industries, we face hiring challenges, but we will find a way, and we'll find a way together. And we look forward to continuing to get better service out the street for you. Unless there's any questions, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report for today.
Thank you, Catherine. Are there any questions? Okay, with that, we'll move on to the report of the Performance and Oversight Committee from Michelle Zemanek, its chair.
Morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Chair. The Performance Oversight Committee met last week, and I have 3 resolutions for your consideration this morning. The committee reviewed 2 procurement items and determined the bids to be in accordance with the authority's procurement policies and procedures. The price is fair and reasonable, the bidders to be responsible, and the bids responsive. The Performance Oversight Committee recommends the award of bids listed in the resolution for the total amount of approximately $332,000. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
May I have a resolution? A motion, I'm sorry, may I have a motion? Is
So moved.
So
there
moved.
a second? Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
The next resolution seeks authorization to enter into an agreement to provide professional services to coordinate paratransit service for individuals with disabilities and older adults in Allegheny County. A request for proposals was publicly advertised and 1 proposal was received. In accordance with Port Authority's procedures, it was determined that appropriate and reasonable efforts had been undertaken to solicit proposals and that the requirements of the RFP were not restrictive. Staff determined that the TransDev Services Incorporated submitted an acceptable proposal and is qualified to perform the services. The Performance Oversight Committee agreed to recommend entering into a 5-year agreement with TransDev Services Incorporated for a total not to exceed amount of up to $2,447,400 for the first year of the agreement. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
May I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
The final resolution seeks authorization to enter agreements with a pool of firms for inspection and engineering services for the 2 categories of 1, inspection and engineering services for repair, and 2, engineering services for rehabilitation or replacement. The authority intends to enter into agreements with up to 3 firms for each of the categories. Proposals submitted by GAI Consultants Incorporated, TRC Engineers Incorporated, and Michael Baker International Incorporated have been determined to be the highest rated proposals for both categories, and these bidders were determined to be responsible and the bids responsive. The agreements will be for an initial 4-year term with the option to extend the agreements up to 1 additional year at the sole discretion of the authority. The Performance Oversight Committee agreed to recommend entering into agreements with the firms for a total not to exceed amount of $22 million, which will be allocated on an as-needed basis through task-specific work orders. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I need somebody else to second. It's your motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
That concludes my business. Thank you, Mr.
Michelle.
Chair.
With that, we'll move on to the report of the Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee from our chair, John Tague.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and fellow board members and stakeholders. The Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee met last week, and I have a few updates and 3 resolutions for board's consideration. First, David Huffaker, Chief Development Officer of the Authority, provided an update on the bus rapid transit. It was reported that the FTA, Federal Transit Authority, risk review is still ongoing. After the FTA finishes their review, we will execute agreements and conduct another round of public outreach. We anticipate construction to begin in FY23. I would now like to present 2 resolutions on the BRT. First, the first resolution seeks authorization to enter into an amended and restated cooperation agreement with the city, county, and the URA for the BRT project. All parties have negotiated an amendment cooperation agreement and addressed critical issues to be complete construction of the project and begin operation. The resolution would authorize the authority to enter into an amended cooperation agreement with the parties. I respectfully request board approval.
I have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Is there any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next resolution seeks authorization to enter into a cooperation agreement with the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority for the BRT project. In order to proceed with the BRT construction in the downtown corridor, Port Authority requires a relocation of certain water lines and related facilities operated and maintained by the PWSA. The Port Authority and the PWSA have negotiated a proposed cooperation agreement for the BRT project Phase 1 work that addresses critical issues to complete design and construction. This resolution authorizes the authority to enter into a Phase 1 cooperation agreement with the PWSA. I respectfully request board approval.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
And second, I'll take that as a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries.
Thank you. Next item is Ellie Newman presented overview of the Port Authority's Title VI program. Title VI is a federal law mandated by the Civil Rights Act of 1965, which requires Port Authority to maintain a Title VI program and to ensure that we protect our riders against discrimination based on race, color, or national origin. An overview of the 2019-2021 report period was presented to the committee. The resolution authorization to adopt the Port Authority's of Allegheny 2022 to 2024 Title VI program. As required by FTA regulations, Port Authority reviews and updates its Title VI program every 3 years to ensure that the program remains in compliance and to document the Title VI analysis conducted for any major service or fare changes over the prior 3-year period. Staff have updated the Title VI program to include review and compilation of the 2019 to 2021 Title VI major service and fare change analysis. The resolution would authorize the adoption of the updated Title VI program, its submission to the FTA, and management's ability to make further changes required upon FTA's review. The entire program, which is in Exhibit A, is over 500 pages and will be posted on the Port Authority's website. We also have a few copies available at the sign-in table. I respectfully request a board approval.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, last two items on the agenda. The Allegheny County Transit Council met virtually on April 27th. The council was provided a presentation of the Title VI program and an update on the upcoming Mon Incline Phase 2 rehab project. The next scheduled meeting is on May 27th. The Committee for Accessible Transportation did not meet in April. Their next quarterly meeting is scheduled for Thursday, May 5th. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, John. Are there any questions? Okay, with that, we'll move on to the report of the Finance Committee from Chair Anna Quirk.
Morning, Chair and fellow board members. The Finance Committee met last week, and I have one resolution for your consideration. This resolution authorizes the authority to extend the agreement with the Stadium Authority for free rides from downtown to the North Shore for 2 more years at a cost of $265,000. The agreement states the Stadium Authority is only required to pay if the parking lots and garages on the North Shore reach 85% capacity for 3 consecutive months in the first year and 80% for 3 months in the second year. These usage levels have not been sustained since the pandemic began in March 2020. Until these percentages are met, Port Authority would continue to fund the monthly payment via CARES Act and related federal stimulus funding. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
I have a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you. Also at the meeting, the March financial results were presented. It was reported that total operating income for the month of March was under budget by $3.9 million. Passenger revenue was $70,420 higher than February totals. Total operating income for February 2022 is $34.2 million under budget for the fiscal year due to lower passenger revenue and access shared ride revenue. It was noted at the meeting that federal ARPA funding will be used to make up for this revenue shortfall. Total operating expenses in March were $1.4 million below budget. The expense categories of utilities and other expense were over budget for the month. This was due to a timing issue, and both categories are under budget for the fiscal year. Total fiscal year-to-date operating expenses continue to trend below budget by $35.2 million. Total subsidy for the month was $9.2 million below budget due to lower ARPA invoicing from initial plan. Total subsidy for FY 2022 is $13.4 million below budget due to lower state operating assistance and vehicle overhaul subsidy and ARPA invoicing. Finally, it was reported at the meeting that the authority ended the month of March with approximately $160.9 million in cash reserves. That concludes the report of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Ann. With that, we'll move on to the report of Technology Committee from Jim Liptak, its chair.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. The Technology Committee met on Thursday, April 21st, and I just have one resolution for consideration today. One bid was presented for the purchase of replacement video storage devices for the bus and rail fleet. The Technology Committee recommends that the contract be executed with March Networks in the amount of $960,000. So my fellow board members respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
I have a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
And I'd also like to report there was a very good presentation that was done by our Port Authority Safety Officer, Bert Jennings, and our Chief of Police, Matt Porter. It gives information on the rules and the importance of our video cameras and recording devices throughout the agency. I do appreciate them coming forth and bringing that information to us. It was germane to the topic at hand at the committee meeting, and I do appreciate all the information they provide to us in the public. So with that, that's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there any new business? Okay, then with that, we'll move on to public comment. The first speaker is Ralph Williams, President ACTC.
Yes, good morning, members of the board. It's great to be here today. And I want to talk about, CEO Kellerman talked about the service problems. And I think I speak for everybody. It's unacceptable. There's people waiting out there in the cold for hours. There's people even in the dark at night waiting out there in some dark spot, waiting for a bus. Bus doesn't show that they're expected. And I understand that everybody's having this same hiring problem. Port Authority board, you guys have got to sit down with the union. You guys have got to get this, whatever you have between you, worked out for this COVID thing and these shots and everything else. That has to be worked out for the sake of the public. And you talk about safety. We can't have people standing out in the cold waiting 4 hours for a bus that's not going to show or whatever. And that is a safety problem in my eyes. Next, I want to talk about funding. I'm suggesting that Austin Davis and Jim Brewster, please go to your respectable parts of the at the Capitol in Harrisburg and recommend that we, for new funding, go to the casinos, natural gas drilling, and the liquor stores. And stop taxing the gasoline and things like that so we could get funding for the Port Authority and for the riders. Everybody have a great morning. Thank you. Be safe.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Our next speaker is David Glickman. Mr. Glickman. Going once. Going twice. Okay, with that, our next speaker is Andrew Hussein. Andrew, are you with us today?
Yep.
Going once.
Made it in the nick of time.
Hey. Andrew, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Barely.
Getting any better there?
Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, you're on. Reminder of the time limitations. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Good morning. So, yeah, I am here this morning to discuss these service issues we've been having, as well as the cuts that have been made on the recent timetable adjustments, and talk that there might be additional ones. And of course, Port Authority is not acknowledging that they're cuts. They're just calling it, adjustments, redistribution of service. But no matter how you spell it out, it still equates to service reductions, which is cuts. And this situation is getting to the point now where whether it's Port Authority, the union, whoever, both sides need to come together and sort this out, because the situation is becoming increasingly unacceptable, unconscionable, and downright shameful and embarrassing. People are paying for a service, and right now what Port Authority, whether it's Port Authority's own fault or not, is providing more of a disservice than a service. You have people waiting 2, 3, 5, 10 times longer than they should for buses, if there's even a bus at all. And it's even affecting the rail too a little bit, and it's getting absurdly insane, especially given Pittsburgh weather and the instability of the weather. You can say this is for safety, but you have people at night, in the rain, in the cold, in bad neighborhoods, at bus stops without shelters, with poor amenities, etc. Bus stops not lit up for long periods of time, and that's also not safe. Yes, health is important, and yeah, both sides need to come together to figure this out, but the way things have been going right now, it's not acceptable, it's not sustainable, and Port Authority is literally shooting themselves and their workers constantly in the foot until they just, I guess, run out of bullets, or the whole thing goes down in flames, or what have you. That seems to be the path the Port Authority has chosen to go, is that they want to die on this hill. And it's not acceptable. So please,
Thank you, Mr.
get your act together, figure something out.
Thank you, Mr. Hussein. Our next speaker is Taylor Thompson. Taylor? Going once, going twice. Okay, our next regular meeting is scheduled for May 27th, 2022. And with that, we stand adjourned. Have a great weekend, everybody.